I'm Kathy Frantz, my husband Larry Frantz. He's the patient here.
I was working at the time. We were living up in Alaska, and I was working at Walmart up there, running their meat department, and I just started not feeling good. I thought I was urinating a little bit of blood. Just didn't feel right.
He had diarrhea for like 3 weeks,
yeah.
And he dropped about 20 pounds real fast.
I came home from work because I have never been sick, and I've only had one operation in my whole life. But when I say I got to go to the doctor, then you know I'm sick.
Yeah.
And they thought I had
hepatitis
at first.
Yeah, didn't fall into the parameters for hepatitis other than the fact that he turned very, very yellow almost overnight. He became like day glow yellow. It was just really shocking. It was no doubt that he was jaundice.
All the tests that they were doing was coming back negative. So they basically threw their hands up in the air and said, well, I don't know. And they sent us to Anchorage. And what they found in Anchorage was that my bile duct was blocking. And so what they did was they went in and they put a stent.
Within about 3 days, the yellow was gone. It just started like just draining away from him. So his color came back to a little more normal.
So they sent us home after that, and it plugged up again. So we had to go back and have another stent put in. And I asked the doctor, I said, how long am I going to have to keep doing this? And he goes, forever. And I says, I don't think so. Because if you have to go back and have a stent put in, obviously something's wrong that's making it plug up. So basically they did a lot of tests, they did a lot of blood work, and everything still came back negative. I've never had a test come back positive of pancreatic cancer before.
Nothing. Everything came
back negative.
When the doctors in Anchorage finally decided that we should go to Seattle, Washington, to a bigger, better hospital there. So I then remembered that Larry had some stock through his work, and I figured out how much it was. And unbeknownst to him, I sold the stock and I bought the tickets and I made the appointments because I knew he would say, you know, I'm not going, we can't afford it, yada, yada. So we get to Seattle and he has his last ERCP with the doctor there, name of Michael Florence. Wonderful doctor, wonderful surgeon. And his premise was we go in knowing, believing that this is pancreatic cancer, and it was the first time somebody ever really said it. He says, we go in expecting it to be pancreatic cancer because pancreatic cancer is a liar. Every biopsy came back non-malignant, no cancer, but pancreatic cancer is a liar. We go in knowing that it's there until we can prove it's not. Right. They did what's called a Whipple, and it's supposed to last about 5 hours, and his ended up lasting 8 hours. Halfway through the surgery, I get a phone call from the doctor calling me from the surgery room and telling me that I had a choice to make. They couldn't find any clear borders in Larry's pancreas, that he kept taking more and more and more, and he wanted me to make the decision of whether or not to close Larry up, have him go start chemotherapy, try to shrink the tumor, or take the entire pancreas out and go from there, making Larry a insulin-dependent diabetic immediately. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, his pancreatic cancer, just take it out, get it out of him. I just wanted it out of him. And so they ended up taking his entire pancreas. He has no pancreas. I didn't know you could live without one. I bet you can.
Me either.
So they took his pancreas, his spleen, his duodenum, his bile duct and his gallbladder, 5 inches of his upper intestine and a quarter of his stomach, and then a handful of lymph nodes
21.
surrounding areas to try to measure how far this had spread. And luckily, it hadn't spread anywhere. They got everything that they knew of. So.
And I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4.
Yeah, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. But as everybody told us, we were really lucky because we found it in time. Well, I wasn't really happy with that because his life expectancy was 5 years, but we were lucky. So that began a recovery, and he was able to eat solid foods, I think, day 5 post-op, and he kept complaining about everything felt like it was just sitting there, and he ended up being very, very uncomfortable every time he would eat something solid. I mean, it just really hurt, and he felt just really weird about things. So they sent him in to do intervention radiology, where they go in and scope through his side to take a look at things. And they found that there was a leak in his liver, and so there was no bile getting to his digestive system. So he was right, all of the solid food that he was eating was just sitting right there. It wasn't being digested, so yeah, he was very uncomfortable. So they got things rerouted finally, 2 or 3 more procedures later. And then his kidneys started not functioning properly, and he wasn't getting rid of fluids. And of course, he's got all these IVs going into him, and he's getting a lot of fluid, and he started retaining fluids. And he ended up putting on 80 pounds of excess water weight in his tissues throughout his whole body. And the only remedy of this was to start giving him diuretics and then for him to walk. And he's got all these IVs still hooked up to him, and his feet are so swollen and everything, but he's got to walk. So I badgered him, and I know he probably hated me at times, but you got to get up and walk. So we went round and round and round in the hospital, on the surgical step-down ward where he was, and we finally got to where we go downstairs and walk and see different walls. And when the weather was good, we were allowed to go outside. We finally got things turned around, and the fluid started draining. Thankfully, it took about a week, and for that all to go down and for him to look normal again. So then we were able to leave the hospital. We went back home. We got out of the hospital, and we were supposed to fly home to Alaska, and we had to go get some paperwork from the doctor's office. So we went and got that, and we decided to do a little bit of walking in downtown Seattle, because the sun was shining and it was beautiful, and we were going to get to finally go home. And we got it, I don't know, we'd walked about maybe 6 blocks, thankfully all downhill. And all of a sudden, he started having abdominal pain, just really, really bad. So it turned out he had a femoral hernia. 2 days later, we finally were able to fly home to Alaska, finally get back home. And it was 2 months, because the surgery was on March 19th in Seattle. We got home on Mother's Day. And then on the 31st of May, he flew to Washington, D.C. to start chemotherapy, which was just supposed to be, a precautionary thing, because they got everything when they did the surgery. We were separated for the 6 months that he was in doing chemo in Washington, but he felt good enough that between his 3rd and 4th rounds of chemo, he flew home to Alaska, and we packed up the little stuff that the movers didn't take into a U-Haul trailer, and we drove to Mississippi from Alaska. And we arrived here in Mississippi on the 12th of June, sorry, at 4:30 in the morning, and at 5 o'clock that afternoon, he had to be on an airplane to fly back to DC because he had to start another round of treatment. They did a CAT scan between the 4th and 5th rounds of chemo, and they discovered that he had a new tumor growing in the bed where the pancreas used to sit. And it was inoperable because it was wrapped around the vessels and nerves that run in that area. But the doctor there, the oncologist there, said, well, it's come back while you're on chemo, so it's inoperable. You're going to die in 6 months. Go home and make some memories with your wife. My daughters, bless their hearts, told me that if this was his decision, he didn't want to go through any more treatments. Don't try to push him into doing anything else because he's made up his mind that, you know, okay, it's over, so don't ever talk to him about doing anything else or trying alternative medicines or anything like that. So I was chastised by my daughters. Love them to death, but Larry is 6'7". And when he got sick, he weighed 240 pounds. When he got off that airplane, he weighed 170 pounds. And he, you know, no hair or anything, walking with a cane, just this frail, sick, old man. And it was just devastating. I had taken his father to the doctor, and I was reading a Memphis magazine, and there was an article in there about a pancreatic cancer survivor. And so I took that article out of the magazine and I brought it home, and I wanted Larry to read it when he got here, and I had it sitting on the kitchen table. I didn't press him to read it or anything. He kind of found it on his own, and he read it, and there was a website to go to mentioned in the article, and he went on the computer and he went to this website, which was the Costin Foundation's website, and he saw the interview done with Carl Gardner, and it was very uplifting and everything, and it told about the pancreatic cancer support group, the survivors support group. And Larry said, I want to go to this. So I said, okay, we'll go. And the first meeting that we went to, he met Carl, heard the other survivors, their stories and stuff, and the things that they were doing, and it gave Larry the will to live. And it gave me my husband back. He decided that, okay, we'll find an oncologist and we'll go from there. And we got appointments with an oncologist here in South Haven, a Dr. Azmi, and he's been treating Larry for the last 2 years or so. Larry still had a couple of spots in his lungs that were so very tiny, and they shouldn't have been there, but there was no telling exactly what they were until they started to grow. And when they started to grow, the two of them just barely got big enough in this past July to finally try to do a needle biopsy. And the results of that came back suspiciously inconclusive. Now that's, okay, what do you mean by that? So Larry and I decided after talking it over that he would do chemotherapy again if the doctor thought that it could help these spots, you know, still not knowing exactly what they are, but most likely they are pancreatic cancer cells that have moved and wandered. He's had 4 months of treatment now, 4 months of treatment. He's going to go 6 months and see what happens.
so far nothing's changed with the spots, with the size of them.
Yeah, they haven't grown
in
any,
my
but they
lungs.
haven't gone down any.
The ones on my liver are gone. That started before, they were gone before this chemo that I'm on right now.
He was so thin, and it hurt him to be in his own body because it was so thin. And the doctors in DC had said that he'll never gain any of the weight back, so don't even try. Well, I've put 40 pounds on him. And so, you know, I keep saying, you know, you can't second guess the power of love.
So now today I weigh around 209. I usually fluctuate from 200 to 210 to 215, somewhere around in there.
So he can at least sit now without his bones trying to work their way through his skin. We'd like people to know that pancreatic cancer is survivable. We have one person in the support group who is 22 years a survivor. So we know it's possible. The biggest thing is when you, if you're a healthy person generally, and you start having issues with your body that you just don't understand, that are, you know, become chronic, don't stop until you get the answers. He would be dead and gone had we said, okay, well, all of the results say that, you know, negative, non-malignant, so you don't have cancer, so we just go on with our lives, and he would be gone.
And your attitude has got a lot to do with it too.
Yeah.
Just don't ever give up. I know it's easy to say, and because I've been on both sides, I've been where I've just given up to. And thanks to my partner here, she kicked me in the butt good enough and got my head back on right. But just don't give up.
Yeah.
And that's one thing Carl taught me. That's because I watched him fight this, and he never gave up. And
No.
that's what he instilled in me.
Yeah.
And even though Carl's no longer with us or anything like that, he lasted for 5.5 years with this terrible disease.
Yeah.
I think it's harder on the survivors than it is with the person that actually has the cancer.
Since moving here, we have no friends, really, except for those in the support group. They've become very cherished people in our lives, and the last 2 years we've lost 5, I think, or 6 of our friends have died because of pancreatic cancer, and that's really hard. It would be wonderful that nobody else would have to go through this. So nobody else would have to see a loved one brought down like that. You know, it's a horrible thing. So it would be great if it was gone.
I'd just like to say one other thing, that how grateful I am to my wife for bringing that article, and how I feel lucky that support group changed my life.
Yeah.
Just by listening to those brave souls give their testimonies about pancreatic cancer, what they've gone through and everything. And also it's a learning procedure. If somebody's doing real well on something, I'll take that back to my doctor and I ask him about it.
Yeah.
And so it's not just where we go and we talk about death and
No, it's so much more than that. That support group
dying, but it's a support group not only for the people that do have it, but also for their what we call caregivers, like my wife is a caregiver. I think it helps them out a lot too.
Yep, it does.
And I'm sorry that anybody has to end up with this disease, but I'm so thankful for the Costons for starting this foundation to begin with, and what all they went through, because when Herb got this terrible disease, they didn't know where to turn, and there's a lot of people.
There was nobody to turn to.
There's a lot of people that come in there and they don't know the doctor to go see, they don't know the questions to ask, so we kind of teach them that. And it's just a group of people that get together, enjoy each other's company, and we hash out stuff. We go out to dinners. That's, you know, it's a real blessing.
It's very bittersweet. Very
Yeah.
bittersweet.
And it's the only one for pancreatic cancer.
Anywhere in the South.
Yes, but they've been very very nice to me, and so